Kurt Russell, born on March 17, 1951, in Springfield, Massachusetts, is a name that film lovers around the world cannot ignore. For over half a century, he has made a lasting impression on audiences through complex, multidimensional performances marked by masculinity, grit, and resilience. From Snake Plissken in Escape from New York, R.J. McCready in The Thing, to Wyatt Earp in Tombstone. But behind the dazzling lights of the stage, behind thunderous applause, lies a silent, harsh, and tear-filled journey. A journey to find his true self. A gay man living beneath the mask of an action icon. Fame cannot hide loneliness. At just 11 years old, Kurt stepped into Hollywood through children's television shows. Despite his young age, his sharp eyes and natural charisma made him a rising star. His career flourished during the 1980s, a time when Hollywood craved ideal masculine figures, and Kurt was the perfect embodiment of that archetype. But because of this, he became a prisoner of the very image he had built. Society, the media, fans, producers, all echoed the same sentiment. Kurt Russell is the epitome of a man. Never weak, never failing, and certainly never different. Every step he took had to exude power and confidence, regardless of the storm brewing inside him. The mask of fame and the double life. Fame, as he once wrote in his journal, is a second skin that increasingly suffocates the real life within me. Behind the compliments and success, he lived in constant fear of being found out, that if the public knew the truth, his entire career would collapse. He tried love, cohabitation, and built the image of a model man. Not because that was who he truly was, but because it was what he had to do. There were nights he cried in his dressing room. There were press conferences where he drank to stay calm. The pain of living as a stranger to himself gradually became a chronic wound lasting decades. A shocking revelation. I am gay. This February, in a confidential recorded interview in Aspen, Colorado, Kurt Russell, with a calm voice and tearful eyes, confessed the secret he had hidden his entire life. I was diagnosed as gay by my doctor. It's not a disease, it's my nature. And it took me nearly 70 years to call it by its name. That statement immediately became a global focal point. Media exploded. Fans were divided. A masculine legend, suddenly admitting something that contradicted everything he once represented, was an unbelievable shock for many. Goldie Hawn, a love story ends. Goldie Hawn, the woman who had stood by him for over 40 years, was always considered Kurt's perfect half. They never formally married nor flaunted their love with ceremonies, but shared a lifetime together. They raised children, shared the stage, and entered old age side by side. But right after that fateful interview, Goldie left. In a short letter to the press, she wrote, "I respect his truth, but my journey can no longer continue here. No accusations, no public tears, just a quiet yet devastating farewell. The dark days and psychological crisis." Goldie's departure, along with the polarized public reaction, sent Kurt spiraling into depression. He halted all activities, quit acting, cut off contact with friends, and suffered a deep mental breakdown. According to a close friend, he experienced 14 sleepless nights, lost nearly 10 kilograms, and had panic attacks at the sight of cameras or stage lights. His family had to intervene. He was admitted to a mental health recovery center in Santa Monica, where he spent nearly 3 months in treatment. There, he began journaling daily as a form of healing. He wrote about the times he rejected himself, the judgmental eyes, the lonely nights when he won awards but felt the most empty inside, social pressure, and the meaning of courage. Kurt's public coming out touched a deep societal wound. Several newspapers accused him of betraying his image, and campaigns emerged demanding his films be removed from streaming platforms. But millions also stood up in his support. Names like Meryl Streep, Timothée Chalamet, Elliot Page, and new generation filmmakers all voiced admiration for him. LGBTQ+ organizations even hailed Kurt as an off-screen symbol of courage, someone who opened a new dialogue about masculinity in the film industry. Memoir, A Journey of Rebirth. Kurt now lives in Colorado, in a modest wooden cabin among pine forests. He spends his time reading philosophy, walking in the early mornings, and writing. His upcoming memoir, The Role I Never Played, is set to be released later this year and is already one of the most anticipated biographies. In it, he writes not just about confronting himself, but also sends a message to those hiding in fear. There is no greater role than your true self. A new symbol, not a character, but a human being. Today's Kurt Russell is no longer the invincible hero of the screen. He is a man who has cried, collapsed, lost, but rose again to live as his true self. And sometimes, courage isn't about holding a gun or saving the world. It's about removing the mask and saying, I am me. Since the incident, each day for Kurt is an unnamed battle. Calls from old directors have gone silent, and interview requests now focus only on his sexuality, not his art. Though he knows his time has passed, the way he exits, with scandal, misunderstanding, and regret, is something he was never prepared for. Yet, in that silence, he began to understand what he had long called the dark space was in fact freedom. He no longer had to fake smiles at crowded parties. No longer had to tense up when a female co-star leaned in for a promotional photo. No longer had to dodge the familiar question, when will you and Goldie marry? In his small sunlit room, where he spends most of his time reading fan letters, Kurt rediscovered hope. Some letters come from Asia, Africa, distant rural areas where being gay is still taboo. One 14-year-old boy from Brazil wrote, I was going to end my life last week, but then I saw the news that you dared to live your truth. Now I want to live one more day. One of the most unexpected moments in Kurt's journey came from Goldie's son, Oliver Hudson. At first, he was silent. But one afternoon in May, Kurt's phone rang. It was Oliver. I was angry at you, but then I realized, you were always still my father, he said. His voice choked with emotion, bringing Kurt to tears. From then on, the fractured family bonds slowly began to mend. Kate Hudson, who had previously remained silent, also sent a card with a short but heartfelt message. You may no longer be Hollywood's leading man, but you're still my hero. Looking back on his career, Kurt painfully admits that some performances weren't built on real emotions but imitation. The romantic gazes, the longing looks at female co-stars, were sometimes just carefully crafted acts to mask the emptiness inside. Kurt Russell's story does not simply end with the revelation of his sexuality. It opens a completely new chapter in how we perceive bravery, truth, and human worth. At an age when most seek rest in the glory of past achievements, he chose instead to step into the light as his true self, wounded but resilient. That journey was anything but easy. It came at the cost of his career, his long-term relationship, and a reputation built over decades. Yet in that loss, he discovered the most profound meaning of life. To live as who you truly are, not as the image the world expects you to be. Now, when people look back on his long path, they no longer see just a Hollywood action icon, but a man who transcended expectations and overcame himself. And that, perhaps, is greater than any role he ever played. Kurt Russell is not just an actor. He is a witness of his time. A living testament that truth, no matter how painful, is always worth living for. He once told a director friend, "My hugs on screen, the audience feels warmth, but I don't." That's why he chose not to act anymore. I've lived inside a script long enough. Now it's time to write my own. During his recovery in Santa Monica, Kurt met a French writer named Julien. At first, they were just two patients sharing breakfast. But over discussions about philosophy, literature, and loneliness, a long-lost feeling returned to Kurt's heart: safety. He never publicized the relationship, never posted photos, never gave interviews. But at a mental health conference for artists, when asked what made him feel alive again, he simply smiled, "A hand on my shoulder, at the right moment." Kurt Russell's transformation is more than personal. It has sparked a wave of dialogue about how rigid the film industry's gender norms have been. Magazines that once hailed him as man of the decade now must rewrite masculinity itself. Vanity Fair once ran a cover featuring him, silver-haired, deep eyes, with the headline, "The truer, the manlier." A French film magazine wrote, "Russell did not betray his image. He elevated it, to a place where truth inspires more than perfection. Kurt Russell is not just a legendary name in cinematic history. He is a symbol of bravery in facing oneself. From gritty action roles to openly embracing his identity, he has walked through glory, doubt, loneliness, and deep loss. But above all, he chose to live truthfully, not as a myth, but as a man with wounds and willpower. His coming out didn't just shatter old prejudices. It opened a new chapter for himself, a chapter of freedom, healing, and unhidden love. For millions still living in the dark, Kurt Russell is a beam of light, reminding us, courage isn't the absence of fear, but the will to walk through it to be yourself.